Hello everybody. Today I want to show you a game from Moscow, 1976, between Mark Taimonov and Vitaly Chesskovsky. Taimonov has the white pieces. This is from the 44th Russian Championship. And the theme of this video is avoiding preparation. I just played in the tournament recently, a game 25 5 tournament, which means 25 minutes on the clock with a 5-second delay, and I did pretty good. I won 3 out of 4 games. I lost one game to 2300 player, um, and I won the rest of my games, and that's pretty good because I have not played in a tournament for 2 years. So I was pretty happy. Um, and so I thought of this idea for this particular lesson about avoiding preparation. So let's get into it. So Taimonov had the white pieces, and I'm trying to clean some of the score sheets up because with this quick time control, it was hard to, some of these games were in time scrambles because my clock management was messed up. But like I said, I was able to win the game. I mean, with that 5-second delay, I actually won one game. I had 9 seconds on the clock. Another game, I had like a minute and change. But like I said, the wins are what counts. But I'm trying to reconstruct a lot of the games from memory because I don't want to end it off and move 20 and say, well, black won or white won. I'm trying to get the all the games together, and then I'll show you show you the game. I have a few games against 1800 1900 players, and there's some instructive things in there, give you some insights on like my thinking process, my thought process. All right, so this game again started off e4 and knight f6 by Tseshkovsky. Now this is the Alekhines defense. Now, again, say, you're like me. You haven't played competition, and you don't want to walk into preparation. Now, okay, this defense is like one of those second-tier defenses. It's not really heavily used at Grandmaster level, but nevertheless, you're playing the white pieces. You don't really, you're not comfortable with it. You don't know it, and you can get in a lot of trouble. Theory has it that the only real way for white to claim an advantage is to push e5. Most people know this, but if you're not prepared, what good is having that theoretical knowledge? Because after e5, you're on your own, and then you'll mess up somewhere down the line anyway. So Taimonov, he didn't want to deal with this. He played knight c3, which is a viable option, and I play this defense myself, and a lot of players will play knight c3. Now again, according to theory, the positions are absolutely equal after this. Black just has too many options. After knight c3, for instance, e5, right? You can just go into the Vienna game if you're black. All right. Now, some players that play the Vienna as white, this is what they do. Right, they plan on playing, for instance, e4, e5, knight c3 anyway, and it would just transpose. But players that are often unprepared or don't want to go into the main Alekhine lines, they'll play this move, knight c3. And again, you can play e5 and be totally equal, but again, that might throw a monkey wrench in the Alekhine player's plans because now he has to go into, say, something that he might not be familiar with in the Vienna game. Many Alekhine players who strictly want to keep it, for lack of a better term, in the Alekhine's realm will play d5, which transposes to a Scandinavian defense. Okay? And you have to, kind of know what's going on a little bit. So after knight c3, right, avoiding that mainline preparation, we get d5. So Tseshkovsky decides that, okay, we're going to go into, this d5 attack. and it's possible to transpose into the Scandinavian after e takes d5. Now some players prefer to push, and then you get different structures that can arise on the board, and you should be familiar with them, right? If you go into a certain structure, you should understand it, because after e5, black has several options. Black can play knight e4. Black can play this move, knight fd7, which is perfectly playable, right? And you see that pawn on d5 is hanging, but so is e5. And also this move right here, which is playable. Okay, so at this point, both players might totally be out of preparation. And if you're unprepared, that's what you want. You want your opponent to be out of his preparation also. But from what I know from playing the Alekhine is that usually Alekhine players are prepared to play d5. They don't go into e5 lines, but they'll prepare these d5 lines. So here Taimonov kept it real simple and played e takes d5, transposing into a Scandinavian. Knight takes d5, and now bishop c4. And again, there's several different ways black can go here. Black can play, depending on the type of position you like. You can play c6 and e6, going into these Karol Slav type structures. But most players opt for knight b6. Attacking the bishop. The bishop goes back. Knight c6 was played. Knight f3. And then bishop f5 was played, getting the bishop out of the pawn chain before closing the deal with e6. This is an equal position. But again, if you're white and you're unprepared, you'll sign up for this. Instead of, it's better to have an equal position than be at a disadvantage. Castle, e6, d4 from Taimonov, bishop e7. Notice how black's development is pretty easy, and there's nothing, no problems that white is proposing at this point. Just getting a game. All right, and that's what I did. Is I realized I hadn't played competitive chess in a long time, and I just wanted to get a game, right? Not be losing out of the opening, just get a game, because I was relying on my understanding of chess, right? To after the opening, to just simply outplay my opponents, and like I said, it worked. So after bishop e7, Taimonov play d5, e takes d5, and we see this exchange of pieces on the d5. Knight takes d5, knight takes d5, and then bishop takes d5 was played. Now the position seems very drawish, right? And what is interesting about it, and is that in these type of positions you can come up with ideas here. One of the ideas behind bishop takes d5 is real simple. Is to relinquish the bishop here and double up these pawns, and then play against a weak black pawn structure. Of course, in compensation, black will have the two bishops. But what I noticed is that many players, like lower rated players, sometimes 1800 and so 1900, don't realize like these like small mini plans in the position, so to speak. They might look at this position and just say, just brush it off and say it's equal, or not really be on the lookout for these small threats. Everybody's on the lookout for the big threat, but the little threats, like, they're overlooked. Tseshkovsky castled here, and Taimonov plays c3. Okay, getting the c pawn, off the second rank, and already having the idea of bishop takes c6 here. Now he could have played it right here. bishop takes c6, and let's say queen takes d1, rook takes d1, bishop, not bishop, b takes c6, and then a move like knight d4. Black has the two bishops, like I said, and white has the better pawns. Again, if you're unprepared, this is the type of stuff that you shoot for, and then you outplay your opponent. And again, like this happened in several of those games where the opponent, once taken out of his opening knowledge, was kind of like forced to just play chess, and eventually would fall into situations where the position just was like a little bit beyond his understanding. He would make like subtle mistakes, and then I would just build, and next thing you know, I would have an overwhelming advantage in the position. So knight d4, okay, and then black could play a move like bishop g4, and perhaps even provoke a move like f3. Okay. Now I'm not saying black is lost here, but these are the type of I think the position is pretty balanced. Like I said, black holds on to the bishop pair and must play dynamically, use the open files, for instance, the B and E files. But I think that this is the type of stuff you try to play for. You create an imbalance, because what I notice is that a player's level will show. The longer the game goes on, especially once the opening phase is, that memorization phase is over with, where the player, has memorized, 15 moves in the King's Indian defense or whatever, or Rui Lopez, their level will start to show right after the opening. Their level will start to show with the, the lack of planning or mixing up plans in the position, stuff like that. And the true nature, if a player is 1700, right after he finishes the opening phase where he's played like a grandmaster and looks like he has this great position, his 1700 level of chess will start showing up, and you just have to wait for that, and it'll come out. Let's get back to the game. I just wanted to show you that line. It's in the same line. After bishop takes c6, queen d1 is not necessary right away. The pawn can take, and then again after say bishop f4, bishop d6 can be played. And then after the trade of bishops, black has some hanging pawns, but he has bishop versus knight and some open lines. So again, just to show you that these, unbalanced and positions rich in possibilities can occur out of these seemingly drawish looking openings. So all of that is going on right here in this position, right? All of this is in the background, so to speak. So c3 is played by Taimonov first, so he wants to get that pawn off the c file. Tseshkovsky peeps the plan, right? He sees it. He doesn't want to go into, that kind of structure. So he plays the move knight a5, right? And what's the plan behind knight a5? Can you see it? He's simply planning to play c6 here, right? And then the bishop has to drop back to one of these squares. Of course, not here. It'll just be hanging, right? And then the knight will simply snatch the bishop. So he plays a3. Now after c6, the bishop has a safe haven. c6, bishop a2, and now queen takes d1. I'm not sure that was the best move here, because black could have, probably used the time to do something else here, perhaps. But queen takes d1, rook takes d1, and he feels a little safer with the heavy pieces gone in the position. So now, can you see the next problem black has to face? Here in this position, white has a slight advantage. It looks like, because you see the symmetry. But here, white has a slight advantage, and the reason is this knight is misplaced now. So, although black had a good intention of preserving his the integrity of his pawn structure. Once he played knight e5, the knight on the rim is dim, right? The knight is a little misplaced, and there's a threat of b4 here. So, and now it's black's knight that doesn't have a place to go. So now there's two choices here. One is b6, so that on b4 the knight can return, right? Tseshkovsky chooses to move bishop e6, which allows white to capture and leave black with the isolated pawn. And this is what happened during the game, right? So we see from that little quiet position that now white has something to play with and work with here, right? It might not be that big, but you know, this is what, you know, white gets from an opening where he didn't play the most critical lines. Let's look at the alternative, b6. So b6, right? Keeping the pawn structure looking good. Bishop b7, excuse me, knight b7. Now bishop f4, ganging up on the d6 square here, right? So this knight can't just pop out here, or the bishop can't pop out. Rook f e8, knight d4, right? Because after b6 was played, the c6 pawn was now left weak. And now we see this double attack on the bishop on f5 and the pawn on c6. So bishop d7 is forced. Now this bishop is unprotected. So we see there's you know, like a constant pressure on the position, right? This like awkwardness that black has to deal with these little problems here. Knight c2, excuse me. Now the attack on the bishop is revealed from the rook on d1. So the bishop moves back to f5. Again, this is a sample variation. Knight e3, attacking the bishop now. Now the bishop has to go back to c8 because d7 is now clear. And now h3. And notice the bishop on c8 is an issue, right? It's like, what are we going to do with it? As well as the knight on b8. Okay, and I'll leave the position right there. We can see that white has this slight advantage. Okay, and if I was black, I would continue with f6, attacking this pawn on c8, trying to slowly unravel this position. So here white has a slight advantage, not a big advantage, just a slight advantage. But black has to be careful. Alright, back to the game. And we can see why Tseshkovsky chose bishop e6. So he rather take on the isolated pawn than get himself into that like cramped situation that I just showed you, you know, after h3, where these pieces, you know, look very, you know, very confused and uncoordinated. You know, although black has a nice pawn structure. I think black can work his way out of this too, but again, it's a preference thing here, and I'm sure he saw a position like this and say, you know what, I'll take the isolated pawn, and that's what he did. So after bishop takes e6, f takes e6, even though it's a potential weakness, at least it's close to the king. And the dangerous light square bishop is gone, so now this knight has some opportunities. Now here, Taimonov played the move bishop g5. And can you see the idea here? And part of the idea is to penetrate these dark squares. This bishop is kind of, you know, being like a gatekeeper. And so why not remove it? White has a superior pawn structure, so why not remove that dangerous dark square bishop? Another idea is rook d7 coming to the 7th rank. But this move is premature here, as you can see that white's development is not completed. You see bishop would be here, rook here, and then because of tactical considerations, black will solve all of his problems by simply playing rook f to d8 because of the mating situation on the first rank. So therefore, Taimonov plays this move bishop g5. Tseshkovsky gives up the exchange. Well, not really, but he plays rook takes f3, and black would simply be winning if g takes f3. So it's not a true exchange sacrifice. After bishop takes e7, rook f7. No doubt that Taimonov saw this, but he liked the ending with the bishop versus knight, and he achieved his goal of getting rid of the dark square bishop, and now his bishop dominates the dark squares. So it's not like, don't think that Taimonov just overlooked the, this move with the rook takes f3, right? His goal was to remove that bishop, and he accomplished that goal. An alternative was just bishop e3, and say bishop f6, and this is a good move. It just paralyzes this queen side. Knight d2, right? Keeping the knight from joining into the game. And notice that this move knight e5, how it's frequently a bad piece, and in all of these variations, right? Stemming from that idea to play c6 earlier. So finally, b6 must be played. b4, knight b7, and now knight e4, of course, protecting the pawn here and threatening this bishop. Excuse me. Rook a d8, f3, king f7, and a4. And black is safe, right? Even though it's an isolated pawn, this pawn is kept close to home, and it's hard for white to realize any substantial advantage there. So Taimonov goes for this move, bishop g5, rook takes, bishop takes, rook f7. Bishop d8 again, poking at this knight right here, cutting off the coordination of this rook. Knight b3 is played. Now again, b6 is possible, with the idea of bishop h4, e5, rook a d1, rook e8, rook d6, and we see black unravels himself. And this is just good for black. Black is okay. It's easy to defend. He doesn't even have to play a move like rook f7, which could be meant by bishop e7. But he can play simply knight takes b2, rook takes, and knight d1. So he played knight b3. Taimonov played rook a b1 as the rook was attacked. Knight c5. So glad to have the knight back into the game. Bishop g5 by Taimonov. And here white just has white has a slight advantage. And this is a good position for technical players. And again, I enjoy these type of positions, especially knowing that I haven't prepared, because a lot of players, weaker players spend a lot of time on the openings. And I've suggested in some of my other videos, if you're below like 2,000 that you shouldn't even worry about studying, like worrying about openings like that. Now, some people take it to the extreme, like, oh, you're saying not to, if you don't study the opening, you just lose. It's not. I'm not saying don't study the opening period, right? What I'm saying is don't spend a lot of time studying openings. Pick openings that are real simple, that you don't have to like. Don't don't waste time. Like don't study King's Indian defense or get into the Dragon Sicilian. You can spend years just studying like those variations, and you will never learn chess. Like you'll just be good at those variations when they pop up, or the night off Sicilian and things like that. It's kind of like you want to learn like chess, and then when you really learn chess, you'll be able to play these type of positions well and outplay your opponents. What happened here is after bishop e3, and right here, white's advantage is increased substantially. This knight is not really for black is not really good. There's no real aggressive places to put this knight. Good outposts. If this knight ends up here, there's always c4 for black, right? His best hope is to hope for something, to get his knight here or something. Right? Let's see what happened. Knight d7, rook d6, rook e7, protecting the pawn. And even here, c4 is possible. Rook b d1, doubling up, threatening to win a piece. King e8, f3. Right? Just slow, slow chess here. And what I like about this move, again, is that down the road, g4 might be needed. Again, I was speaking of the knight trying to get here one day, and then you have this move g4, because that's one thing in these type of endings. You want to kill the piece. If you could kill this horse, there's no a knight needs outposts to prosper, right? Because it's not a long distance piece. See, the bishop can attack from long distance. Like for instance, this pressure on this pawn keeps this rook at home, right? With the knight can't put any pressure on white's pieces or pawns from where it's at. The knight has to be, here or here or here, right? But for the knight to be able to survive there, the knight needs outposts, which are squares supported by pawns, like here or here, right? But if c4 is played, that takes away the d5 outpost, and if g4 shows up on the board, that takes away this one. Meanwhile, the weaknesses that are created on the dark squares as a result of putting the pawns on the light squares are adequately covered by the bishop that's covering the dark squares. Let's keep going. Knight f8. And now white is very close to winning. And I would like to be able to say that white went on and won this game. I mean, it's a technical position. Again, notice the pressure here. Black would love to be able to move this rook, but the d file is dominated. And if he moves a rook, this pawn is, on prise. And his only alternatives is to weaken the pawn structure somehow, whether he does a6, a5, or even a move like b6. Now look at the c pawn. Tremendous amount of pressure. And like I said, white is close to winning. A good, now I can't even say a good player. Like Taimonov is a great player. Somebody like, another Taimonov on a better day might have won this position. I don't know what the time situation was like, or what have you. Here he played bishop g5, attacking the rook, which is respectable, right? Another alternative was just bringing the king to the center and say at the rook d7, rook takes, knight takes, bishop d4, centralizing the bishop against the a7 pawn and putting pressure on the g7 pawn. And if e5, then this pawn gets pinned by rook e1 and then will be lost. So instead of that, knight f6 protects the g7 pawn, Bishop e5, just slowly encroaching on the position. Remember now what I said about this square. c4 would always be able to stop that. There it is. And this is a great position for white, and white probably will win this position 9 out of 10 times. It's a good position to have, right? Not bad for not being prepared, right? Taimonov played bishop g5. Okay, and you get the same, not the same, but an analogous variation. But notice with the bishop on g5, it's not threatening anything, right? And the other variation, the bishop was right here. Instead, he leaves the d file open. So instead of the bishop being here, the bishop is here. He plays rook d6. And now the king cannot protect the pawn because the knight will fall. So the only way he can do it is he has to put the knight back to f8, which is very passive. Bishop e3, king e7. Taimonov played rook d4. Now, if bishop c5, which looks enticing, with ideas like that, then simply b6 would work. And then if rook takes c6, of course, bishop b takes c5. So rook d4 was played, and then after knight d7, king f2, e5, rook g4, king f7. White had nominal pressure, but the game soon fizzled out to a draw after rook e4 and a6. The players simply shook hands. But anyway, this was a very close call. This was a very close call for for black, because at this point, white had a lot of pressure on the position and extremely close to winning. And now we've seen Magnus Carlsen play. We know that these type of positions, he would grind the opponent down into the ground, and so it's something to be taken seriously. And like I said, avoiding preparation is a great, something that I stand by. Unless you have 6-7 hours a day to focus on openings, really study them, then it's like, you should try to stick to more or less systems. Play the Kali system. Look at Gadakamsky, for example. He plays London system, and that's taken off, right? You've seen it in the World Championship. Those are the type of openings where theoretically, black is supposed to equalize, right? But you're getting a playable position, and you're not getting disadvantage out of the opening. You're not getting bombed with some type of tactical trick or falling into a trap or something like that. And you're forcing your opponent to play chess. Those are the type of openings. And then there's black, right? Instead of playing, for example, the King's Indian defense, all of these like deeply theoretical lines, you can play like the old Indian defense, for example, knight f6 and d6, and then ideas with e5, early e5, or knight bd7, e5. Like avoiding just that main drag of theory. I like when people open up with, for instance, say knight c6, right? e4, knight c6. You get something that you could play pretty much against anything, and then you don't worry about openings. Then you study your middle game. You study your structures, and you study your endings. Make sure you know those basic endings, and you get stronger and stronger and stronger with that. And then next thing you know, you'll just be playing, you'll be playing some good chess. I'm gonna show you an example of one of my games real quick, avoiding preparation, to show you what I'm talking about. Okay, so here's a quick example that I played with the white pieces, and this game was played on the 11th actually, a couple of days ago. Like I said, it's my first tournament, 2 years, and they're good. You know, I got a little prize money, so I felt happy about it. So this game, this is actually round one. Again, the time control is 25 minutes, which is not that long, but a 5 second delay, which helped me a lot because I was getting into time trouble, but the delay helped me. So, and again, this is an example of avoiding preparation. So, um, D4, my opponent played knight f6, and I didn't go, you know, I avoided c4. I know that theoretically c4 is probably the best move, right? And going to the king's Indian and all this stuff. But hey, I have a little bit of intelligence. I'm not going into that. I haven't been looking at these games. I haven't watching videos on how to, you know, play this stuff. You know, I have some working knowledge, but I'm gonna avoid that. And that's what I'm telling you to do. If you don't have the time to put in and be properly prepared, stay in your lane. Do what you know how to do. Play knight f3. Can't go wrong. Can't go wrong with that. Okay, you can't go wrong. And Rome wasn't built in a day, so a lot of mistakes that amateur players make is they try to blow the opponent off the board, try to make things happen too quickly. The position, you know, let things come to you. D5. I play E3. Now I'm not saying this is the best move. Again, it's not a theoretical thing. Of course, I could play Bishop F4, get London system, even Bishop G5. I'm just playing to get a position. I'm making sure none of my moves cause me to have an inferior position. I don't mind equality because we're going to see. Because I know that after the opening is pretty much over, the level of the players are going to show. And if he's a stronger player than I am, that his level will show that. If I'm stronger than him, my level is going to show after the opening. So I'm just getting a position. G6, nothing wrong with it, right? There's many options. He could play E6. He could have played Bishop G4, Bishop F5, right? Maybe even C5 here. E6, whatever. He chooses to play G6. Bishop E2. You see how simple and primitive my position looks? It's like a beginning position, right? I'm moving my pieces. I'm getting them out, getting my king safe. Bishop G7. Castles. Castles. How can anyone possibly win from a position like this? Right? It's just a basic position. Now, I have my king secured. I have my king side pieces taken care of. Now I decide, okay, I'm going to start working on his center. Now I play C4. Again, I could play like C3 or something like that. Decide C4. D takes. Bishop takes. Okay. Now he plays knight c6 here. And it's it's preference. And now perhaps he has these ideas of playing like maybe Bishop G4 and E5. Thus, H3. Okay, I gotta keep that. I don't want that knight to get pinned. Now, again, we're kind of out of the opening here. And my plan is pretty simple. I'm going to play knight c3. I'm going to, I have an option either to try to put my bishop on my dark square bishop, that is, on c1, either on b2, or try to get it outside of the pawn chain. Now, in this particular position, I'm looking at the black pieces. I see the bishop on g7, knight here, and the queen here, and the open d file. So, my prospects of playing e4 successfully without severely weakening my center kind of dim. So at this point, I'm not even thinking about really playing e4 or e5, anything like that. I'm thinking about b3 and bishop to b2, putting my bishop there at this point. That's my thought process. Knight d7. Okay. Now, I thought this move looked suspicious to me because I'm like, why aren't you doing something more constructive, doing something else, with the pieces? See, and this is what I'm talking about. The player's level is starting to show. Knight e4, is possible. Even a move like a6 with the idea of b5, right? He plays this move, knight d7. Now, only thing I can really think of is knight b6, but this all seems so slow to me. It's here, here, and here. And also, of course, e5 ideas. But it doesn't, the move is suspicious. So I keep developing. Knight c3, knight b6, and I just go back. But what I want you to notice is that how I avoided any type of preparation, and how simple and innocent my position looks, right? It's not threatening at all. And he's just making moves. But again, the weaker player is gonna eventually be exposed as he has to make more and more moves, and is forced to make more and more decisions on his own without the aid of Grandmaster so and so's moves or the aid of an engine. And I'm comfortable because I know that this position is just like some type of random position. Unless he's like a genie or something, there's no way he's like looked at this or planned on getting into this position from this move order, right? So I feel like we're on equal ground as far as the preparation is concerned, and now it's just a matter of who's the stronger player. He plays the move a6. Okay, innocent enough. Now I continue on with my plan, b3. And now he plays this move, knight b4. Okay, there's some ideas here that spring up, like ideas like bishop f5, ideas of coming back to d5, etc. So here I played bishop b2, and I dismissed the move bishop f5. I was not worried about it here. So for example, knight f4, knight f4, bishop f5. I had planned on just playing e4 here, right, with tempo. So he dismissed that outright. Here he plays his knight 4 to d5, and he's doing a decent job because he's not really weakening himself, right? Not yet. But again, just giving him more rope, and seeing the level of player, So right now he's playing, decently. He's not, doing any crazy moves, right? Again, my plan is real innocent. I play, my rooks on the c file and provoke some weakness over here. Also, looking at the position for white, notice the c5 square. See, this knight is kind of in the way of any type of protection of c5. So this is an invitation on this square for a piece, right? Not just a knight, but any kind of piece. A bishop, these pieces are all invited here. Rook c5. Those are the type of things that the strong player is looking at, right? There's not a bunch of like tactics in this position and white to move and win. There's little small advantages. And I remember reading in the book Blockade by Nemzovich. He said the strong player must become accustomed to appreciating small advantages. And here, white has a small, just small advantage. He has his open c file. He has access to the c5 square, and he has a little bit of space, and he has 2 pawns in the center, right? Little small stuff, but when you start putting them together, it becomes like have that snowball effect. So here's a critical point in the game. Knight 4 d5 is played, and perhaps he wants to trade some pieces, and after knight takes d5, excuse me, knight on d5 takes c3, bishop here, and then he brings the other knight, etc., etc. Here again, I'm thinking about bringing this knight to c5 and avoiding the trades. I play knight e4 because I know that he can't defend. How can he defend c5? There's no way. It's not possible here. So at this point, he can play knight d7, which he did not play, as a matter of fact. Now, on knight d7, there's two moves here. One is rook ac1, which is probably what I would play right away. And then the second one is queen d2. Reason why queen d2 is connects the rooks. And then come to the c file. But rook c1 is like the obvious move right here. Okay, rook c1. And then, just to give you an example, if a move like b6, right, he just weakens his position a little bit more. So say after queen d2, bishop b7, and then you just continue the slow build up against the position. You know, eventually you'll try to work out b4, play moves like that, knight g3. No, I'm sorry, yeah, knight e g3, for example, and keep building on the position. Now what he played, building up the position. Now what he played after knight e4 from me is he lashed out with this move f5, which basically forced me to a good square, knight c5, again showing the level of play, right? Because now it's like after this pawn move, there's no real kingside attack here, and this bishop is blocked in. And if the bishop was able to move, the pawn on b7 is in trouble. Now he has to keep an eye on this square. It was just bad chess. And just like that, my pieces just find good squares. Notice I didn't have to do anything. Right? I didn't have to play like a theoretically, up-to-date opening and none of that. Now of course if I was playing, Grandmaster or something on the internet, maybe I would. The guy did f4. Again, this, dubious move. And now my center starts rolling. e4, knight f6, queen d2. Just simply, threatening to win the pawn. Knight h5. And now I play this move, knight g5, which with the threat of jumping in here, winning the exchange. Now what? And the threat of busting up the black pawn structure after bishop takes h5. He goes rook f6. Now he could have did f3, which would have just basically just dropped the pawn, but he did rook f6, trying to hold the e6 square. And I simply played bishop takes h5, g takes h5. Of course, bishop g4 is also possible, with the idea of removing this guy out of the picture completely, so that white could fully exploit the e6 square. But I destroyed the pawn structure, and then played the move d5, which was my idea, because the rook is misplaced here. Now I unleash my powerful bishop. And it's really difficult for black at this point. We could say that black is lost, just like that, in a couple of moves, right? From such a quiet position, but now he's totally lost. So rook g6 is his choice. And the idea here is that he attacks this knight and he protects this pawn, because if queen takes f4, then bishop takes g2, because the queen is here. Alright, if you want, you can pause the video and try to find out what I played here. Okay, analyze it for yourself. Right, what does white play in this position? Remember what's going on. The rook is attacking the knight here. The bishop is attacking the other bishop on b2. And queen takes f4 can be met by bishop takes b2. So what did white do? All right. So you had enough time to pause it if you wanted to. I just simply played the move queen takes f4. The idea is if bishop takes b2, then there's a mate in 2 after queen f7 check, king h8 forced, and then queen takes h7. Therefore, black is forced to play the move, a defensive move that is. He plays bishop f6. Now I played bishop takes f6, and he played e takes f6. If rook takes f6, then the queen just simply goes to h4. So e takes f6, and now I jumped into e6. Here I played king h2. Now I could have played queen takes c7 here. I thought about it, but I was in some time trouble, and was thinking about these situations later on. I knew I was way ahead, so I just played this move. Bishop takes, knight takes, and now queen d6 was played. c6 was an option, but again, at the knight c7, white is still in driver's seat. Queen d6, and I just went right into the ending because I want to keep things as simple as possible. And like I said, we're in a short time delay, short time control, and it's easier to win these type of positions than instead of having the heavy pieces on the board and guys trying to whip up mating attacks, and you had 2-3 minutes on the clock. So after this, white's completely dominating, as you can see. Rook c8, knight c8, rook c1, knight e7, and this is all pretty much in a couple of minutes on the clock for each side. Rook c7, it's attacking the knight and the pawn. King f7, rook takes b7, king e8, and notice the king can't extract itself. Everything's blocked off. And at this point, I played b4. I actually missed the important move here, but found it in the next time around. Again, white can pretty much win with anything. He played f5, just desperately trying to free himself. And at this point, I played rook b8. And the idea is if king to f8, then just rook f8 is mate. Can you see it? So this forces the win of the knight. The knight must sacrifice itself. If king d7 as played in the game, then rook d8, and that's checkmate. And this is actually how the game ended. And I just wanted to show you that game. I didn't mention the other player's name. I tried not to. I don't want to like embarrass. Because like black play, kind of suspect. So I don't want to. Maybe if it like more evenly played by black, then I'll say yeah, I played such and such. But I didn't want to throw nobody out there like that. But I just want to show you the example of avoiding preparation and just getting this position. And like I said, f5 was a huge error, of course, positionally. But again, from the humble beginnings, just like an innocuous looking position like this, you won't think, from here that that this position will end up excuse me, you won't think that this position will end up looking like this. So again, that's just something to think about, and food for thought. When you're going to play your tournament and you realize you haven't had enough time to prepare. But listen, if you're preparing your openings and you know that all the lines in and out, then hey, have at it, and good luck. But this is for those players who don't have had the time to prepare. and just trying to give you a little, little motivation, little, a little advice. If you don't have that time, you know, don't don't stress it. Just make sure that what you do study in chess is, make sure you study the middle game, your middle game structures, study your tactics, study your endings, so that that you can find, those good moves when you need to find them. So that's it for today. This was a long video. I hope you enjoy it. Please comment, like, and subscribe. And I'll show you some games against masters. I mean, I have I defeated yeah, I had some and I put their names up because they're masters, so they used to having their games published anyway. So I've lost some. I showed some losses to draw. I play international masters. I no shame. So we'll do that. We'll do that in the future. Some I'll show you some games. So all right, guys. I'll talk to you guys later.